Chapter 10 of your New Normal ebook, it's really aimed at the errors of politicians and policymakers who you accuse of following this something called the life cycle hypothesis. Can you explain what this is and why it's so flawed?
Yes, I mean, what we're really saying, Will, is that politicians and central bankers are following a path which is probably 10 or 20 years out of date in terms of a belief that demand is a constant and everybody automatically wants to buy the same things at the same time. And therefore the argument for policymakers, as we've seen since the crisis began, becomes, oh, we should cut taxes some more in order to stimulate this demand, or no, we should do more stimulus, give people more money, and then that would stimulate demand. And what we're saying is this is a very old, out-of-date idea, that we've got a very different society now, particularly because of the ageing of the Western baby boomers, who've never existed before in the West, and also in the emerging economies, a whole set of people coming into the consuming era for the first time. Yeah. And this life cycle hypothesis that people like Ben Bernanke and the central bankers are all in love with, this is just a complete waste of time and is fatally flawed, which is why what they've done for the last 2 or 3 years simply hasn't worked.
Okay. You also argue for a lot more partnership between the states and companies. Why do you think that's an important direction?
This goes back really to a discussion we were having a couple of months ago about innovation and the need for more long-term thinking. And there are plenty of examples on a small scale where government and companies work together, particularly in technical programs and so on, and also, of course, where you get spin-offs from particular government programs. You get more spin-offs from the space program, for example, the developments that you do with things like finance. I mean, Paul Volcker famously said that the only thing to come out of decent innovation to come out of the financial sector was the cash machine. Whereas with the space program, we've had a number of things, including something very useful called Velcro.
Yes.
But what we're saying is we've got to think collectively together here, and think 5 to 10 years ahead. So we need consistent government policies, and we need companies to help assist in implementing those.
You also mentioned in the chapter your concerns about China's latest 5-year plan. Why could that fail, possibly?
Well, I mean, we obviously didn't expect to be publishing the chapter, in the week after there was the latest purge of Bo Xilai, the Chongqing head. But clearly, there are some major issues facing the Chinese government at the moment. People think quite often that we're in a position where China is just going to sail ahead, there will be no problems, soft landing, and everything is guaranteed. What this is showing us is that there's considerable tumult in the Chinese leadership and considerable risks to growth. And particularly, that what China has to go through is greater democratization. People have to be able to think more for themselves at work, because China's lost now its advantage of being the low-cost supplier.
Yeah.
That's countries like Cambodia and Vietnam, and maybe even Myanmar now. So China is quite an expensive place to do business. So you've got to have creative thinking people, and creative thinking people want to stay in the political process as well.
What can people in the chemical industry do to try and help policymakers get it right?
I think follow the example, I say follow, but many of them are already also doing this, of people like Paul Polman, the Unilever CEO, who has a wonderful statement about when I look out 5 to 10 years, which is my job. And that is the real job of the CEO today. It's not to manage shareholder expectations for the next quarter or the next few months. It's really to say, look, we're entering a very complex, ambiguous period. Where do I want this company to be in 5 or 10 years' time? And how does the team that I've got with me and the employees, how are we going to get there? That's the big issue, and we need CEOs to focus on that alongside government and alongside, obviously, the rest of society.
Thanks very much, Paul.
Thank you, Will.